So one of the major themes or goals of Whirlpool is to explore the relationship between the internal and the external. Obviously, there's a big gap between the internal experience that people have and what people do or have to do or feel pressured or obligated to do in the world and in their lives, in their communities and in their environments. And so obviously it's like a theme of human experience as well, how to navigate the difference between yourself and the uniqueness and kind of aloneness of your specific human experience and the things that we share, the shared space and the shared understandings and rules and images and the kind of direction or the threads of meaning that we share in the world, the external world. To what extent we actually share the things that we share is up for debate, really, because I can only know my experience of the things that we share. But we agree that we share them anyway. And so we kind of agree that the things that we share need to be managed and treated with respect so that we aren't having a negative effect on each other or dominating each other or whatever. But the extent to which we are actually achieving that level of respect or that level of balance between people is also up for debate. But as far as I can tell, our attempts to manage internal life from an external space have not gone very well. And that goes for physical and mental health, it goes for education, it goes for politics, it goes for the law. The amount of human life that you can manage in an external way is quite limited. Well, the only thing that you can do really is place limitations on the way things emerge in the world, which doesn't really do much for the actual understanding that we gain of the world. So, controlling the way people communicate, for example, doesn't make people understand each other more. It just controls the format that things come out in, which isn't actually that useful in terms of respect, because respect is something that you have to feel and understand. You have to feel respect for yourself and in yourself and feel it from other people in order to give it to other people. And so just having limits on the ways that you can express certain things or the ways that you can refer to people or whatever doesn't really do much for cultivating that understanding and that respect between people. And obviously I talk a lot about work as well, because work dominates so much of our life and our time. And it's one of the main things that people feel obligated to do in order to feel part of society and part of community. And we've got the same problem dynamic with regard to work as well, and with contributing value to the world in exchange for money, usually, or in exchange for anything. And the things which are treated as value are relatively limited, whereas the things that actually could be of value that people have to offer or that people could develop into something of value, abilities and talents that people have, or even just dispositions that or tendencies that people have that could be developed into a service, are far more diverse and infinite, really, because there's the innate perspective and ability that you have, and then there's the infinite different ways that you could develop that into something visible and tangible. And so that has that same dynamic of it not being clear how to translate the internal into the external, or not being clear how to manage the internal, so that we can find a peace or a balance between the internal and the external. As far as I'm concerned, the internal is more important than the external. And the things that we try and manage on the external are for the purpose of making the internal experience better. You know, the things that we're trying to... The ultimate purpose of trying to manage social and political life, that is the relationships between people and the movements of people in the world, the ways that our movements affect each other, is so that people's internal experience, you know, their lived experience, can be better. But we're still trying to do that through force and limitation, rather than teaching people how to cultivate their own internal experience and engage with that and bring that into the center of their life. Because it is the center of your life no matter what you're doing. No matter how externally focused you are, it's still your experience of that work or engagement or communication or whatever it is that guides your relationship to it. It guides the way that you feel about it, what kind of interest you have in it, how valuable you think it is, and whatever. And so that compass itself is a super key element of human experience, and it's really close to the innate value that everyone has to bring into the world. But we still have the emphasis too strongly on the emergence in the world. Too many people still think that the value itself is in the thing that you do for the job, or the product that you produce for the job or to sell for the money. Whereas it's actually it's one step back from that. On the inside, the internal element of the work that you do is the part that's really important. Because the part that really changes the way people see the world, or the possibilities for the people in the world, or the possibilities for opportunities for people to engage with the world in a different way, is the real value. You know, everything that comes up that is a new technology or a new system or a new approach to dealing with things in the world, though the technology might emerge in an object, a device or something, or the system might be a set of rules or a set of processes that people have to undertake to do to perform a task in a certain way that's new or better or whatever. The real point of value that is contributing is deeper than that. It's in the engagement of it, and the moment of understanding it and seeing things in a new way is the real value, and that is the real technology. And so that is bringing it back to the internal layer, or the internal level of the world as well. So it's not only that your internal experience and my internal experience that we all care about. The things that we contribute to the world are also, the reason that they're contributions is that we contribute to other people's internal experience. And we just use that form, the language of the world, of whether it's a visual language or it's spoken language or whatever it is that you use in the world to create the effect in someone else. It's always that effect that's important. So the more that people can engage with their own internal register of meaning, the more they're going to be able to tap into the way other people internally register meaning. and value. And I think that the people who really contribute value are doing that in some way. And the people who are not so much contributing value or even hindering the contribution of value are always the people who are trying to contain value in the external form. So you have to keep the law because it's the law, and that's the external form that it comes out in. But the purpose of the law is actually to give people guidelines to create a good and balanced and safe society. So that's the goal. And the thing that's going to do that most is people really thinking for themselves about what's going to be best for other people. And it might not necessarily be doing things exactly the way it says in the law. For example, if it's a green light, it means go. But if there's a car coming anyway, you should stop because that's the safer thing. So that's the purpose of the red light, is to tell you to stop because it's someone else's turn to go. But the thing that makes it safe is your reading of the situation, for checking right there and then whether or not it's going to be safe to go. And so training people to check the situation for themselves and judge for themselves what is going to be the best course of action, the most safe, the most productive, the most efficient or useful, or depending on the situation, whatever is the most valuable, is always going to create better situations, no matter what part of society, what level of society or infrastructure or whatever. And the more we try and enforce rules and make people perform in a specific form, the more we're going to produce either danger through people not being able to think for themselves, or just a lack of value, or a lack of life, really. It's kind of like a division between life and death, you know, movement and growth and evolution versus not that. Stillness and stagnation and degradation. So we've also kind of got a polarity or a division between health and work. And health is a really important part of your internal life, because if you don't have your health, then your internal life is not going to be enjoyable or useful or productive. And so even if we're talking about a situation where a company employs a person to do a certain role, it's in the company's benefit anyway for the employee to be as healthy and as happy as possible. And so it's kind of weird that we're still stuck on these ideas of it having to work a certain way, having to work a certain number of hours, having to work a certain number of days for a certain amount of money, rather than creating situations for people to be able to contribute the most value. Because even in a company setting, the better that you and your employees produce value for the world, the better it's going to be for you and your experience of the world. But we get into this trap of taking and thinking that we're going to get more by taking, but we actually get more by giving, because the more you give, the more it expands, and the more it creates a chain effect of giving, and then the more giving there is in general. And I think that there's a limited amount that you can give, but the more you give, the more you create an unlimited amount that you can receive. But there's a limited amount that you can take. And so the amount that you can take is always going to be a lot less than you can receive if you open up the gateway of giving. But I think more importantly, for individuals, I mean, everything, it has to be managed on an individual and personal level. We're never going to manage health from the top down. Obviously I think there should be health services, and like ways for people to improve their health, and ideally learn how to improve their health for themselves. So that, the more you can do it yourself, the more happy and healthy and balanced you're going to be. But I think the ultimate benefit of the collective and the health of the collective is going to come out of people taking responsibility for their own zone, and that includes your body and your mind and your immediate environment and your community, and then that filters out into society. It's like a trickle out method. The more you cultivate internally, the more it nourishes everything around you. And I don't know, it's weird that we've got a division between health and productivity, because obviously the most productive you're going to be is the healthiest you're going to be. They engender each other. And although you might squeeze a bunch of extra productivity out of yourself now, this year, or this 5 years or 10 years, it's never going to be as dynamic, even in that short term, as if you really cultivate the wellspring of value inside of you and really understand what your value is to give, and put that above everything else so that you can cultivate it to the highest level and have it on tap, have it available to contribute to every situation that you're in. Because the approach of doing as much as you can now for this system or machine, like that is a workplace or an industry, and then burning out and then kind of having nothing left. The value that you've contributed in the first place is kind of, it's not going to be real value anyway. It's kind of like it's a quantitative value, not a qualitative value. It's not the unique quality that you have to contribute to the world. It's just energy being transformed or translated into units that can be exchanged for other units. And the same goes for every environment that we engage with. So social environments and relationships and any kind of situation where we use communication. Everything is coming out of our sense of value. So if you cultivate a sense of value that is rigid and sick and petty and selfish, that's going to come out in all your interactions, and that's going to be the seeds that you're planting in the world. Those are going to be literally the structures that you're creating with the world. And that also feeds out into wider and wider ranges of society. So the more people who are engaging with that level of themselves, the more space there is and possibility for more people to do that. And then it's like a chain effect. It's an upward spiral rather than like a closed off, locked down, rigid downward spiral. But so health is not just important for your well-being and your ability to be in the world, or to remain productive, or remain able to engage and give and exchange. But it's the physical patterns that you maintain in your body are physically the impact that you have on the world, the influence that you have on the world. And so whatever it is you're cultivating in your most internal space, and in the different parts of your internal space, including your body and your mind and your emotional space, which is, is actually everything that you know and have ever conceived of is in that space, is in your awareness. But I think a lot of the problems that we're seeing are deeply intertwined with the lack of awareness that people have of their own patterns and their own space the quality of their own body and mind, or what feels like a high quality of body and mind or energy, and what feels like a low quality, good patterns and habits and practices, and negative patterns and habits and practices. I think most people don't have an internal practice or a health practice. Probably a lot more people exercise, which is all right, but very few people turn that into a practice where they're actually engaging with themselves and their experience and their sense of meaning and their the actual material of their energy and their being through that practice. And so it doesn't matter what that thing is. It's a module that you use to engage with yourself, and you use that to engage with the world in order to engage with yourself, and vice versa. It's kind of like a circular engagement, a cycle of engagement. The more you engage with yourself, the more you understand engagement with the world. The more you feel healthy, the more you understand what feels healthy in the world, what feels balanced, what's going to produce balance, what's going to make other people feel good so that you all produce balance and value together. But it's not even particularly hard to maintain health and balance in that way. But it's hard to get it back if you fall off or fall down far enough to really realize that you needed it, which is usually the way. And because we've come to this structure where we rely on the world or society or infrastructure for most things, it can be hard to get a real sense of rhythm and regularity in your life that also feels like you. You can get structure if you go to a job because they tell you what to do and when to do it and when to turn up and when to go home and when to eat your lunch. Kind of like a kindergarten. But it's not a type of structure that reflects who you really are. It's a really predefined, rigid kind of structure or rhythm. And then you still have to figure out who you are and which parts of your day, which parts of your engagement with the world are you, feel like you, and reflect you within the pockets or the spaces that are provided in that structure. So it's giving you structure, but it's not really giving you shape. It's not giving you an opportunity to establish your own structure. It's just giving you this, take what you've got, take what you're given, and work with it. Work with whatever you've got. And that's all right as a starting point, I think. But unless you use it to develop your own rhythm and your own sense of grounding, your own sense of self, or a sense of center, the benefits of it are not going to last very long, I don't think. And you can see that. You can see that in people who have worked the same job for a really long time or worked full-time for a long time. If you dropped them into an open schedule, they would either spin out doing whatever they want with no structure or freak out having no idea what to do. And that's not really good for anyone, and it's not sustainable. Neither way is sustainable. Alternating between rigid, empty structure and no structure doesn't really create momentum for anyone, and it doesn't create value. But especially, this is my thing, is that I think that if we gave kids from a young age, if we had given you from a young age this sense of what you are looking for in the world, just the sense of it, just what it feels like, then you'd always be looking for it in everything that you do, and it wouldn't matter so much what you did, what situations you found yourself in after that, because you would have that core currency of experience. But because we don't find that, most people don't find that in their early life, it's a lot harder to get it later on. I mean, whatever. It's a lot harder to get the notion that you should get it later on. You can get it any time because it's always there. It's like, it's like the fundamental makeup of your being. But most people are so absorbed in the external rhythm that they don't look to find it. And so obviously this is why meditation has started to take on more popularity, because people are realizing that they need time with themselves and they need that sense of center. Even though a lot of kind of popularized forms of meditation aren't really taking people there, I don't think. Like we could go a lot deeper, but it's a good start. But I think that is where it's heading, is that people are realizing this isn't really doing it. The things that we're doing in work aren't really what we need. We spend a huge amount of time and energy and resources doing these things that we don't really need and aren't doing these things that we really need, or producing the things that we really need. And yeah, that central personal sense of value, I think, is at the core of that. Like food and water is also great, but like it's better if you know what you're looking for. If your engagement with food and water even is a personal, spiritual engagement with it. An engagement with everything that you experience on the level of your experience of it. Otherwise, everything just becomes interchangeable and it just becomes a choice. It becomes a product. And it becomes something where the meaning is decided for you and is limited to that meaning. The meaning that can be contained in an object, even food and water, or, money or things that you buy with money, property or relationships or anything. When you look at the external definition of it, the amount of meaning that can be really contained within that form is so limited. But when you're just looking at it as a way to project your internal meaning, or a lens through which to see your internal meaning, the meaning that you can see through it is infinite. And if you can use every part of your life like that, then everything that you do is meaningful. Everything's a success. Everything's beautiful. Whatever it is that you're looking for. Because you're using that lens, the lens that makes it that way. But if you let the world decide for you what has meaning, you're hardly ever going to find it, because you're only giving yourself this like tiny little peephole to look through and then trying to find this meaning. Where is it? But I mean, it's not there, and it is in everything. Yeah. But the way to get there is through personal practice, and it really doesn't have to be meditation if that's not what turns you on. But the thing about meditation is that it's direct. It's like, well, I'm just being here right now and I am just me. I am just this, whatever it is, we can't define it, but this essence of being. And then you just sit with it and you observe it, and that's it. And eventually you have to drop down through levels of distraction and projection and avoidance to be like, all right, I'm just going to sit here with it and then see it and feel it. And it just is you. But everything, whatever you can find an enthusiastic engagement with that really gets you, that really makes you feel inspired, that's not, the value isn't in that thing, like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or makeup or whatever it could be. It's in that feeling of inspiration. And everyone knows what that feels like and knows that it feels good, but not everyone engages with it to the point where they feel the quality of it, where they could judge the quality of it. Because we're so absorbed in this analysis or comparison of meaning in the world, all these different meanings, all these different units, all these different problems you have to solve, like puzzles, always moving parts around, that when you feel something really good that feels really pure and exciting, that makes you want to be enthusiastic and engage and find out what it's about, then it's just like, oh great, it's like, it's like a relief as much as anything. Like, oh okay, it was worth it to be alive. But if you can grab a hold of your rhythm by having a practice or something that you engage with every day that is your module for finding your core of self, then you're going to build up the strength of that inspiration over time so that it becomes the main thing that you're doing. And then when the things aren't that, they become not worth it to engage with, because they're not for you. They're not going to give you the inspiration. They're not going to build your value, your present to the world. So, it's worse for you and for other people to engage with those things that are going to take up your time and energy and ultimately reduce your ability to be happy and healthy and successful. Because you don't need them, they drag down your time, and then you're taking them away from someone who could need them, maybe. But it doesn't seem to be clear in society that that feeling of inspiration and purpose is part of being healthy. That being happy is part of being healthy, or being engaged and motivated is part of your health. And your health is part of being motivated and engaged and happy and having purpose in the world. So you can't have one without the other. What's the point in, gaining a high level of success in a company or an industry if it's not if it's not resonating, if it's not connected with your sense of meaning? It may as well be a game where you achieved a really high level in the character. And then you still have to find that meaning and probably your health as well. But it's about where it comes back to your physical existence. It's also your energy, the physical energy of your body. The core of your energy and the signature of energy that is going to really make you feel alive is the same thing, whether it's whether you're interpreting it through health or work or communication or relationships or whatever kind of activities that you're doing in your life. They all come from the same energy, and that core of energy is you. It's the seed of you that flowers out through all the different things that you engage with in your life. And so if you're not building that thing, you're depleting it. And you're just using it up. And depending on what you're spending it on, you're probably spending it on things that don't matter to you. And if they don't matter to you, then they're not cultivating something that you could contribute to the world that's going to matter to everyone. So I know there's this game, tall poppy, squabbling, petty game of you shouldn't do that for you. You should do what the world wants you to do. You should do what your community wants you to do. And that's true, but you should do it in alignment with what you really have to give. and with the giving that really cultivates your sense of meaning. Because if it's not that, then people aren't really going to want it, you know. If people are telling you not to work on the thing that's really important for you because it's not good for them, then it's kind of their problem. You know, why would they limit your ability to contribute value to the world in order to get some less important, lower quality value out of you in the short term? It's just a waste of time. They should be spending that energy cultivating what they really care about. Yeah, and that's actually a thing that I've been thinking about over the last few months quite a lot as well, is these kind of like community / political dynamics that are all about telling people what not to do and kind of trying to micromanage the way people choose to live their lives or try and, you know, engage with their purpose or develop a purpose in the world, rather than doing, you know, creating a positive value, positing something new that would solve the problems that they see in the world. There's so much talk about, well, this person shouldn't be doing that because they could be doing this and whatever. And it's like, you know, like Elon Musk shouldn't be going to Mars. We should solve the problems on Earth first. And it's like, well, there's billions of people in the world. Everyone should be solving different problems. And they're going to be solving... The highest problem solving that you're going to do is going to be solving the problem that you're most passionate about. And so neglecting that in order to do something that your kind of logical mind says is more important is just depriving the world of a higher opportunity for a higher value. So if you think Elon Musk should be using his money to feed the poor rather than going to Mars, fair enough, whatever. You do it, you know. That's the problem that you're passionate about solving in the world. So while you're sitting around talking about why Elon Musk isn't doing it, which is an irrelevant conversation because he's not, and you don't know him. It's not like you're going to go and be like, Elon, why aren't you doing that? We should do this new project where we're going to feed the poor. You should put all your effort and energy and resources into solving that problem if you really feel inspired about it. But I think and fear that the people talking about problems in that way are not really inspired about the problems, because if you're inspired about a problem, then you want to do the work to solve it, because it's not work that's taking away from you, it's work that's feeding the inspiration in you. And so it's much more about being in the mode of blame and negativity than it is about solving problems. So it's kind of a matter of awareness too, because it's easy, it's so easy to get caught up in those ideas of problems and of right and wrong, should and shouldn't. But it's more important to have an awareness of what is really important to you, rather than staying tangled up in these ideas of what is important to the world. Because you're never actually going to comprehend the totality of problems and solutions in the world. You're only going to be able to really comprehend and get to the bottom of the totality of problems and solutions in your view and your perspective. And in order to do that, you need to get to the core of your perspective so that you're seeing everything as a means of cultivating that core and that value. Because awareness is kind of part of the same core as purpose and value and health and energy. You know, the core of your being is also the core of your awareness. So your awareness isn't just something that it's not pure. I mean, it's pure in the sense it's pure to you, like it's essential to you, like there's an essence of you, but it's not neutral. It's not like the things that you're seeing, the way that you're seeing things are just the way they are outside of you. Everything that you see is your perspective projected onto it. Like it's like a reflection between you and what you're able to see and the thing that you're seeing. So get the idea out of your mind that you're seeing things in a way that is correct to the world. You're seeing things in a way that is correct with you, and the way to become more correct or ethical or moral or whatever it is that you're going for is to become more you, more subjective, and really get to the essence of that perspective and that awareness. Because that is going to be what makes you able to be someone in the world who can do the right thing. If you're always tangled up with all these different ideas of meaning and different ideas of right and wrong, and trying to include all these different perspectives and all these different parties and all these different people, and do this equation of like, well, this is right over here, so that's right over here, so I should do this, you're never going to do the right thing. You're never going to be able to get this magical action that pleases all the different parties. But it's kind of like a paradox, because like when you're always trying to do the right thing, you always upset someone, because you're like on this wavelength of there being a right and wrong and a should and shouldn't, and pleasing and upsetting people. It's kind of like a dualistic wavelength. The more you put pressure on one side, the more you kind of elevate the other side. But on the other hand, the more you go into just what is really important to you, the less people criticize you. It's almost like it's correct on a physical level. Like it's virtuous on such a fundamental level that people's chattering arguments don't even go there. And actually, it's interesting. I've been reading back into this Qigong book that I got a while ago for reference, and it talks about Qigong and meditation cultivating virtue. But this Qigong practice in particular is like a standing Qigong practice, and it's about aligning the posture and just meditating in the correct posture to get the correct energy flow. But it's saying that correct energy flow is the virtue itself. If you become correct in the body, then you become correct in the mind, and you become correct in your health and in the world. And they're all part of the same, they're different registers of ways of understanding the meaning of the correctness. But the essence is one essence. The essence of correct, centered, balanced, grounded, purposeful, successful, aware being is one thing that you cultivate with every action that you do that is correct to you. Cultivates that core of energy. So that's what is both important about personal practice and about cultivating value in the world, external practice, external development, self-development, the stuff that you might do for your work or for your, communicating your value to the world, has all got that same essence and that same core. And people who want to make it, who want to be the next I can only think of stupid examples like Donald Trump. You know, even like whatever, the next like Michael Jackson or something, the next Michael Jordan, the next Kanye West, the next whoever's the top of their field. Like, it's in that unique signature of your essence, both in a physical sense and a personality sense, and in terms of your skills. And, you know, it's the nature of your perspective on the world. The way that you see everything is encoded with your unique signature of energy and potential and value. And that's what you need to cultivate to the highest level in order to be recognized as valuable to the world. The more you cultivate it, the more it's visible to people, and the more they recognize that it's value that they are resonating with. And one of the key points of Taoist meditation and meditation in general, but this is the way they say it in, you know, Chinese philosophy, is that the qi goes where the mind goes. So if you're doing a practice every day where you come back to yourself and your whole awareness is trained on your essence or your being, then that is where the energy gathers. And so the more you do that, the more you cultivate that essence. But on the other hand, the more different things you put your attention into, and the further away they are from you and who you are, then the more you dilute that essence, and the more you have to kind of strive to get a sense of value and success and recognition and all those good things because there's less of it in the substance of your life, internal and external. But it's like the more you make that the focal point of your awareness, even when you're doing things too, if that's the focal point of what you're cultivating in the external world as well, then you're not only cultivating that in yourself and cultivating good, stable, healthy energy in yourself, you're cultivating it in the world around you as well. So you get more of you from the world. You know, it's like you're encoding it into the world by encoding it into yourself. Because, surprise, you're a part of the world. Your body's in the world, your mind's in the world. There's no barrier between you and the world that separates your subjectivity from the world. So its authenticity itself is the kind of alchemical elixir that allows you to be valuable and be successful and be virtuous and be, you know, important to people. But it's also, authenticity itself is recognized by the world. Authenticity itself is the core of value. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, it matters that it's authentic to you, and everything else important and valuable stems off of that.